Macedonian chili pepper spiked toilet paper. Warning, some audiences may find this content disturbing. View at your own discretion. Welcome to the House of Reddit. Today, we share some juicy r/nuclear revenge stories posted on Reddit. Macedonian chili pepper spiked toilet paper. The supposed second wave of the coronavirus here in Europe has everyone here going a little bit cuckoo. Toilet paper sales are on the rise again. Arguments somewhere up the chain of command has had us temporarily leave the shipyard and do heavy metal building on a usual building site. There really wasn't much interesting to see, except for a seemingly nice old lady that occasionally pinched rolls of toilet paper from the porta potty, standing just outside the building site. We found it amusing and thought nothing of it. That is until the weekend came along. It was Saturday. It was a holiday, and according to the rules, no work is to take place on that day unless for urgent work. Which we were doing. In accordance with regulations, the whole community was notified, but the sweet old lady decided not to play by them and wanted to ruin our day. Almost as soon as we arrived, the old lady turned into a bitter hag and almost immediately gave us a hard time about working on a rest day. I will not go into detail about what that argument was about, but it did involve the old lady making a complaint to the police, for which we had to stop work while they checked our paperwork. That meant that we had to stay longer than planned. I was unfazed by the event, but my boss was cussing for pretty much the entire afternoon. That is until I asked him, "Boss, can I handle this?" His anger immediately subsided as he knows me for 5 years and knows what resourceful pranksters I can be. He said nothing, he just gave me a thumbs up. At the end of my shift, I grabbed a roll of toilet paper from the porta potty and took it with me. At this point I would like to mention that one of my coworkers is a Macedonian farmer. I don't know what kind of dirt they have there, but he grows the most toxic hot chili peppers I have ever tasted. They are tongue-searing, eye-watering hot that will leave atheists making prayers on the toilet type of hot. And the maniac brought a full jar of them to our apartment abroad. After work, we go to the market. I buy some thick oil, a paintbrush, and some finely ground barbecue salt. We go home. I take a few of my friend's peppers, combine them with salt and oil, and put them in the juicer, seeds and all. I whirl the juicer until it's all a fine, smooth paste. I pop the lid, and OMG. We got blasted by pepper gas. Noses burned, eyes watered, me and my coworkers gagged and coughed. My boss couldn't even finish a single swear word, he was coughing so hard. I had to work fast before I permeate the whole house with the burn. I lay all the toilet paper across the table and use the brush to begin dabbing it with the vile goo. It took 3 hours to get the roll gently spiked with the toxin so that it wouldn't be visually noticeable, but we still had to get rid of the smell. We take it to our upstairs bathroom, and leave it to dry on our clothes drying rack for 3 days with the windows fully open. Every morning one could hear birds singing somewhere near our open windows, but for 2 of the 3 days when we were drying the toilet paper, not a single bird could be heard in the morning. It's day 3, and the smell was gone. We took every effort roll the paper to make it look like it has never been used before, we even used flour water to glue the edge back together. When the day came for the porta potty company to restock the toilet paper, we planted the bait with the supplies. Just like clockwork, the old lady came that afternoon to snag most of the supplies, including the spiked toilet paper. That was yesterday. As write this, nothing has happened yet, but I have the feeling that, someday, the wrath of Satan shall descend upon the religious old lady in the bathroom for coveting her neighbor's goods. To be honest, the idea wasn't completely mine, I got it from a video game called Neighbors from Hell. And I am also under no illusions over what I have done. My response to a ruined weekend was petty, overblown, and took way too much time and effort for something that may not even work. However, if you want a story where Op is always the hero, you may wish to try another channel. My mom serves piping hot revenge to a good boy. My parents moved to a rural area to be near my dad's mom, GM, and her mom, GGM, both widows, a few years after my grandfather passed away. They were given a small farmhouse with land which had belonged to GGM's brother. We'll refer to him as Great-Great-Uncle 1, GGU1. The farmhouse was just down the road from GGM and GM, who lived together in GGM's house. Also on this road lived GGM's other brother, GGU2. So, lots of family for several generations living and farming and running cattle on adjacent properties. Well, GGU2's son, let's call him good old boy, Gob, wanted to put up a new and better fence for his pasture which was directly adjacent to my parents' property. Gob came to talk to my parents and let them know his plans, and they were, of course, fine with it. Then they got a surveyor to come out, and lo and behold, Gob had started to build the fence on my parents' property. And not just a few inches, but about 10 or so feet in. My parents figured out it was because Gob wanted the barn. GGU1 had built a barn to share with GGU2, and though it straddled the property line, it was mostly on my parents' land. So they went to talk to Gob. They told him he could have all of the barn if he'd take it down and reassemble it fully on his property. As the barn was part of the property given to my parents along with GGU1's house and land, this was actually a generous offer. It would be a big job, but was not an impossible feat. The barn was a basic structure, maybe 15*x15, with a corrugated tin roof and lots of open sides. All my mom asked was that she be given a couple of the big railroad ties to build a sandbox for me and my siblings. Well, Gob didn't like that and started to run his new fence line to include the barn, instead. Now, my mom is not a drama queen or pushy or loud, but she is a farm girl and not in any way a lightweight. She rides horses and big tractors, DIYs/MC givers all the things, and has been known to chop the heads off moccasins and copperheads when found on the front porch. She's also a Yankee woman, and she'd taken some snark and some rudeness from Gob, who looked down on both Yankees and women. When she realized what Gob was doing, she said to my dad, "I'm going to burn the barn." So the very next morning at about 4 a.m., my parents went out to the barn. My dad doused the interior with kerosene. My mom made sure she was the one who lit and threw the torch. It sailed straight through the upper floor window. It was dark and quiet just long enough for my parents to wonder if they'd need another torch. And then the old, dry wood soaked with kerosene went up in flames. The barn burned hot and fast, and completely to the ground. As the sun was rising, the flames were dying down to embers and the barn was a smoking heap. I can picture my mom dusting her hands on her pants and then walking quietly back to the house with my dad. Gob never did believe that my mom was the one who burned down the barn. She didn't argue with him. She's not the arguing type. She's the type to nod and smile and then do exactly what she wants. Gob exacted his own petty revenge by pushing all the burned wood onto our land. But the fence line went where it was supposed to, so I think my mom came out on top, anyway. Plus, there were enough big pieces left over for a sandbox. Stealing our parking spot. This takes place a while back, probably about a year ago. My girlfriend and I are currently in college, and as this was before COVID, we would often find ourselves studying late at night in the library, usually because when I'm serious about it I go through my schoolwork rather slowly. This particular night, however, I had a nitro cold brew with an extra 4 shots of espresso from the Starbucks in the campus library. This really got the gears in my head turning, and I managed to crank out my history paper in about 2 to 3 hours. Since we had enough time, we decided to go get some dinner at this really good restaurant close to the campus. This restaurant is super popular in my city, and not just for the students, but they do add to how packed this place gets. It's hard enough to find a table inside since there's not a table number/host system. The restaurant is set up so that you walk in and order right away, and then you find your own table and wait for your number to be called, then you bring your food back to your table. This isn't a small building, there's quite a bit of tables inside. Yet there is still often a shortage of seating. I'm mentioning this to give you perspective of how packed the parking lot is. The parking lot for this place is small. The number of parking spots is probably about 1/5 of the number of tables inside. So although this wasn't a busy night for the restaurant, the parking lot was still packed simply because of the lack of parking. There were 3 cars looking for spots for about 20 minutes, an SUV, my GF and I, and another sedan. Finally somebody is leaving, we turn on our blinker and pull up to the spot so that we are the ones ready to take it. And out of nowhere some dickhead in a 350Z with his GF pulls into the lot, speeding, cuts us off, and steals our spot. As this had already angered me, the nail in the coffin was the little smirk that girlfriend gave to us. As I was unbuckling my seatbelt and getting ready to commit a crime, my GF stops me and I agree that it's not worth it. By the time another spot became available to us, since we didn't steal anybody else's spot, the restaurant was about to close. So I did the only reasonable thing in this scenario and went to the nearby Walmart to buy sticky notes. After I acquired the pettiness vessels, I wrote "she's cheating on you bro" onto the sticky note and stuck it right onto his windshield. My GF and then proceeded to stop by In-N-Out, grab some Neapolitan milkshakes and cook something home. I'm not sure what became of that couple after that night, but I sure like to think I made an impact. Using speakerphone in a public toilet. At the University of Iowa, there is a large fundraiser called Dance Marathon where college students sponsor a child who had cancer and dance for 24 hours. The party can get fairly crazy, and the families who come to join the dancers can be pretty cool. However, last year, I noticed a new family who had 2 kids, one who looked to be about 10 and one who looked to be about 5. The mom seemed a little self-centered from what I could tell, always budging through lines for her kids and such, but the dad was a whole other story. He was very large, and had a mildly inappropriate t-shirt that looked straight out of a strip club. He was constantly budging and pushing through the crowds, and he was constantly yelling at people for getting in his way or being too close to him. At one point, he sat at the table down one row from my family and saved the entire table, which was meant for the college students, for the 4 of them. He started hoarding all the food and candy for his kids, and even walked over to other tables and stole food. Later during the night, the junk food and such was really getting to my stomach, so I rushed to the bathroom. I opened the door, immediately hearing someone talking very loudly. I immediately recognized it as him. He had his phone on speaker, and I could tell it was him calling about something to do with his insurance. From what I could hear, the person on the phone was being very polite and was taking their time. Meanwhile, this big douche was sitting on the toilet screaming at them. I then realized now was the time to take my revenge for everyone he had been inconveniencing. I let it rip. I had the longest, loudest shit I've ever had in a public restroom. The man started to get nervous, as the insurance person was asking for him to move somewhere private. I could hear how embarrassed he was. I then loudly groaned and said out loud, "They really need to put more air freshener in this bathroom." The man immediately said to the phone, "I'll call you back," but before he hung up, I flushed, washed my hands, and instead of using the paper towels, used 2 of the jet dryers for both my hands to make as much noise as possible. As I left the bathroom, I heard the ding from when you hang up a call, and I walked away with a smirk on my face. I have never felt so accomplished. I told a few of my fellow dancers, and they all thought it was hilarious since they noticed him being rude too. I didn't see the man for the rest of the night. If you enjoy this video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. If you have any suggestions for future videos, please let us know in the comments below. Turn on the notifications to know when we post new videos. Thank you for coming to the House of Reddit.